Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the workshop. It's fantastic to have you here because we're working on the handle of our Damascus steel rapier. I want to make this thing great. We've got a long day ahead of us, lots of good work to do. I am all PPE'd up. I'm going to be having my Bluetooth headphones in. I'm going to be listening to an Audible audiobook. You're going to be listening to 12 Rules for Life by Jordan B. Peterson. I've been enjoying it a lot so far, and I'm very pleased that Audible is today's video sponsor. Thank you, Audible, because they're giving you guys a free trial and a free audiobook. So if you go to the link in the description, audible.com/forge, or text FORGE to 500-500, you can get on that, start listening today, but make sure you watch this video first. We've got some handle making to do, so let's do it. This block of African blackwood. It went well, we used the mill. We used both an end mill stuck way out. It loaded up very fast because I was using a 4-flute end mill. As far as I understand, soft materials want less flutes because ship evacuation, you don't need as much. Well, less flutes would help with chip evacuation, obviously, but since the material's softer, there's less load on the teeth anyway, so you don't need as many, which means that then you can do the optimal thing, I guess, which is be able to evacuate as many chips as possible. The problem that we had is this African blackwood here, it's gummy, and you cut it and it loads up in the flutes of the end mill, or obviously a drill, because you also saw me use a long drill to get the hole all the way through. Now, in terms of the setup for this, you saw me use a square and just eyeball it to some scribe lines that we made over on the granite block with a height gauge and then with a ruler and a scribe. And that all helps to really hog out most of the material, but you'll see, I try and put this on there, it doesn't fit. The reason for it is that long drill bit, it always ends up wandering, and so it's very difficult to end up with a perfect thing the whole way through, but we can get as close as possible in the top little bit that's done by an end mill. And of course, that means that now we have to resort to the good old-fashioned hand tools to get it the rest of the way open. These are the tools that I think are going to help us get this done. A 6mm round chainsaw file. Sadly, it's a rather fine cut, so it's not ideal for the wood, and it will load up as well. A little square file. Now this looks like more of a bastard cut as opposed to a second cut or a finishing cut. And this is an interesting little contraption. This is a file. I think we made this modification when Will Stelter was here, when we made this pirate's cutlass. And so it's a little hooked chisel for poking into a hole and then chiseling out the material. Needs a little sharpen, but this should also be a very good help. So you can see what it does. Good for a little freehand grooving and hogging the material inside the handle. There we go. Now she really cuts. So we've now got it to the point where, obviously, our basket hilt, swept hilt fits. This little piece, don't know what it's called, fits, and so does our African blackwood handle. So that's all fantastic, but there is one issue with it, which is, okay, the African blackwood handle, it's pretty solid. It's not, it's a pretty good fit there, it's the last 1/8 inch or so requires me to push it. That's good. But it's just not super duper accurate. This here has some wiggle in it, and the guard itself has some wiggle in it because I am very bad at filing. I need to practice a lot. Things will tighten up as we hammer the last little away, But still, we're at risk of things twisting and not lining up perfectly with each assembly and disassembly. So what I want to do to make sure that we can index everything nice and tightly and make sure that this wobble doesn't throw us off, I put it on the wrong way, and make sure that we're not putting things on the wrong way, is I want to drill and pin so that we can have locating pins so that everything schmusses together nice and neatly. So we've got a set of dowel pins here, and I've decided that we're going to go for a 2.5mm dowel pin for the first piece. And this is how we have it set up in the vise. A little precarious. I have to drill with a hand drill into here, which is going to be tough. It's going to be tough. There's also a tennis ball right there. Don't know why there's a tennis ball there. Okie dokie, I've made the executive decision. We're moving to a 2mm dowel pin. Oh no! 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 It fell again. I never figured something I'd be battling with was how to pick up pieces of steel that weighed so little. Ah, we found one. That's too long. In we go again.
One eternity later.
We got it! So, we're going to slip that in there until it bottoms out. Now, this isn't going to be the final pin. We're going to use this as a marking pin. I'm now going to take a Sharpie and about 30 thou up, or maybe 20 thou up, make a Sharpie mark. And what we're now going to do is we're going to chuck this up in my cordless drill. We're going to go to a belt grinder. We're going to grind that down and make a point here, which we're going to use as a center punch to transfer the location of this hole to our spacer piece. So, I have no idea how to hold it. Oh, and then that goes in it. So now, if I set that there, we apply some forwards pressure, take this block of wood, apply that pressure, then I'm going to hammer on the back end, center punch. Thank you, Starrett. I did not drill that hole very straight. Are you kidding? No. How did I do that? That's shockingly poor. I should not be allowed to use a hand drill. There is no. We've got to go to the mill. Lesson learned. Do things right first time when you can. No. I've dropped that pin 3 times now. Oh, I like that. That looks super solid. It's actually really tight as is, and there's now no gaps even between the forge finish. I like that. And I lost the other pin. No! Center punch is too short. Well, our little transfer punch is stuck at the bottom of the hole. Can't get it out, so we'll use some fire. And I burned all the hair off my arm. So now I've done a lot of scribing and a lot of laying out so that not only on the block of wood can we see and picture what's going on, but in my head I can better picture what's going on. Interestingly enough, and very much because I'm not the best filer in the world, not the best tang hole maker in the world, it is not actually square to how it is that we intended it to be square. We're slightly off. And so the way this sits means that there's a little too much material on this side here, and so I've accounted for that in the scribe, and it's just ever so slightly twisted, so there's also a little bit too much material here. So in my layouts, I've been accounting for that, and we've got scribe lines on the ends, which are going to be very useful, and scribe lines on the sides, which are really more for my imagination than anything. Before I go ahead and grind anything though, we're going to run into the mill, and I'm going to go ahead and drill 2 index pin holes here in the African Blackwood. Now a little earlier on, which was actually yesterday because today is now the future, you saw me use 2mm dowel pins. I think that here, since we are very close to running out of material, we're actually going to step it down even further, and we are going to go with the 1.5mm dowel pins. They are very small dowel pins. So, it is now time with those holes drilled, because obviously I don't know how to use a hand drill, and so you couldn't trust me doing that. So those holes are now drilled. better that we did it on the mill because I can hold it square while it's still square. And I'm just bad with a hand drill, as you saw a little earlier. It's now time to go into the grinding room and very carefully, we're going to start working this down to our measurements, to what's in my head, and hopefully it ends up being all right. So we're going to start with a 36 grit belt. Always good to use a brand new belt on wood. Wood isn't going to wear away a brand new belt. It's still good for steel once it uses wood, but as soon as you touch steel onto a belt, it won't at all cut wood, even though it's still cutting steel. So new belts. We're going to be roughing it out of the 36 grit, and then we'll begin contouring it at the 60 grit. I don't know if we're going to go any further until we go back here for more measurements and more thinking, but certainly we're going to make some progress right now. So here we are off the 36 grit, roughed in, basically so that, okay, we don't have it square, so we can't work off our original scribe lines, but this is even the whole way round at the 36, so anything that I want to do, I can just scribe from this, hopefully. One thing to consider with this, however, is obviously it's a really chunky. That's probably too big, a lot too big in fact. Is this handle has steel as part of it, right? And so it needs to be good to grip really far up here because then we have a finger in the guard, but also needs to be good to grip a little bit further down. I don't have the biggest hands in the world, so I've got to account for that, but even so, the handle is way too large. Of course, the fact that it's square is going to play a part in that, but for certain, as this is meant to be the rectangular portion of it, this is way off. And so what might indeed need to be done is the apex of our convex, which is now 1.3 inches away from the end, we may need to bring the apex of that convex, we may need to bring the apex of the convex forwards so that it stops a little sooner and tapers off a little further up the handle. However, I think the first thing to do before we go making any drastic changes is octagonalizing this. Not really octagonalizing it, but giving the effect of octagonalizing. On the 45 degrees, we're going to come in here on the ends, on both sides, take what we have and hog off all the material that's going to be on the corners, keeping it angular. We're not going to be making it oval yet. Yeah, see, this basket's gonna need to be moved up. That was all right, I already knew that. It was too close up here. That's fine, a little bit of heat, we can lift that basket up so we have a little more clearance for a hand, because that's very tight in there. Very, very tight. You know, that's contacting. I have to say, I think the idea of doing convex really will be quite nice, but we might have to move that apex a little closer to really, really be able to thin it down. So we're going to be thinning that down just a smidge more. I want to make sure that we thank today's sponsor again, which is Audible. Thank you, Audible, for allowing me to get through this day enjoying some wonderful audiobooks. Thank you for allowing me to enjoy so many days here in the workshop, being informed, listening to great stories, learning a lot, and having an all-around great time listening to audiobooks. It's a great time to be alive when all this information is so easily accessible. As I said, today I was listening to Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. I recently very much enjoyed the audiobook, as I said last time, 12 Strong by Doug Stanton. They made a movie about it. What did I think about the movie? I thought it was pretty good. It was a good action film. Lone Survivor, an incredible book. American Sniper, of course. I recommend all of them. Make sure you go to the link in the description below or text FORGE to 500 500. You guys are going to be able to get a free trial and a free audiobook. So pick one of the books that I suggested. Enjoy it. Enjoy your commute to work listening to these incredible books. Thank you, Audible, for sponsoring the video. Again, that link is audible.com/forge. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you hit subscribe if you're new. And I'm going to see you on the next episode. We've got a lot more work to do. I'm very much looking forward to bringing you along.